Welcome back to Heroclix Clash New Player Orientation. Today we're going to be discussing Chapter 2 of the Comprehensive Rulebook, Assembling Your Force. Chapter 2 starts off with, before a game of Heroclix begins, you and your opponent each need to assemble a force to play with. Your force is the game elements you play the game with. Game elements are primarily characters and standard objects, but other additional game elements exist and may be added to your force. In rules, game effects, the terms team and force are interchangeable. Team is used more colloquially, while force is more technical use as it relates to specific game terms like starting force. Section 2.1 Build Totals. The build total is the maximum value allowed when adding together the point values of all game elements on your starting force. A standard Heroclix game, typical for tournament play, is 300 points. Section 2.1a Non-Standard Build Totals. Standard Heroclix games use a build total of 300 points, but any point increment agreed upon by all players or predetermined by a tournament organizer may be used. For non-standard build totals, it is recommended to limit the listed other game mechanics to the following, but any amounts agreed to by all players or predetermined by tournament organizers may be used. Maximum of 10 actions per turn. See 7.8 Action Totals. Maximum of 10 game elements in starting sideline. See 2.6a Sideline Restrictions. 2.2 Point Values. The point value of a game element is the number of points it costs to add to your starting force. 2.2a Multiple Point Values. Some characters have choices for their point value, separated by a slash. If the value is a color other than white, you use the starting line corresponding to that color on a click of the dial. If all the different values are white, you use the green starting line regardless of the point value used. 2.2b Without paying its cost effects. A game element added to your starting force without paying its cost means that you do not include its point value towards the build total. The game element still retains its point value during the game and, if KO'd, is scored normally. 2.2c Additional Costs. Some effects or game elements may be added to your force that increase the cost of a character, such as optional traits. While these increase the overall cost of adding the character to your starting force, they do not change the character's point value. Any effects looking for a character's point value still check for the printed number that you use to add them to your force. 2.3 Starting Force. Your starting force is the force you build during force construction and contains all game elements that you begin the game with on or off the map, but does not include your starting sideline. A starting force must include at least one character that isn't a bystander. Game elements that join your current force later from the sideline outside the game or from an opponent's force are not part of your starting force. 2.4 Starting Force Restrictions. Special types of characters have additional restrictions when constructing your team. 2.4a Unique Characters. Unique characters have a silver ring on their base and character card portrait. A team can only have one copy of each unique character, denoted by a silver ring, but can have multiple different unique characters. Non-character game elements, like special objects, can also be labeled as unique and follow the same rules. You may not include more than one copy of a specific unique game element between your starting force and sideline. 2.4b Prime Characters. Prime characters have a green ring on their base and character card portrait. You may not include more than one prime character between your starting force and sideline. 2.4c Title Characters. Title characters are listed as title characters on their character card. You may not include more than one title character between your starting force and sideline. 2.4d Requirements for game elements to be legally added to force. In order for a game element to be added to your starting force, the game element must have the following: a set symbol, a collector number, and point value of at least 1. 2.4e Promotional Game Elements. Some game elements are marked with a purple ring, similar to the silver ring on unique figures. These game elements are promotional game elements and are not legal for tournament play. 2.5 Current Force. Your current force is the force you are currently using during the game, including game elements that were added to the game after it began that were not initially a part of your starting force. It includes game elements both on and off the map, except game elements that have been KO'd or are on your sideline. If an effect refers to your force, it always means your current force. 2.5a Restricted Characters and Current Force. Once the game begins, a conflicting unique game element or prime character may join your force. For example, Mind Control can have an opponent's prime character temporarily join your force, even if you already have a prime on your force. 2.6 Sideline. During force construction, some effects may allow you to build a sideline. Your sideline contains game elements that can come onto the map later in the game or have special effects while in your sideline. If a game effect looks for the point value of a character on your sideline and that character has multiple or variable point values, you may choose which point value and applicable starting line to use for that effect. If a character is added to your sideline from the map during the game, before they leave the map, they unequip any equipped equipment and drop any held terrain markers. 2.6a Sideline Restrictions. A player's starting sideline can have 2 game elements per 100 points of the build total. For a standard 300-point game, this is 6 game elements. The maximum number of game elements that can be added to your sideline is 10, regardless of the build total. After the game begins, your sideline has no limits. You may not use powers or abilities of any game element that are in your sideline, including effects that apply during force construction, unless an effect specifies otherwise or has the sideline active key phrase.